Mm.
Oh, okay.
All right, so hello and welcome to this artist talk with Eden Seifu and Oreka James. This is part of a series of conversations that Cooper Cole Gallery does with artists in conjunction with their exhibitions at the gallery. So this talk is in conjunction with their two-person exhibition called Fantastic Passage. And I'll be sort of moderating this conversation, and we'll be hearing a lot from the two artists on their this new body of work for both of them. So I'll start by reading the artist bios. Oreka James creates paintings and sculptures of portals to alternative realms in which moments of love, spirituality, the metaphysical, and the ephemeral collide. Informed by oralities and folklore, she recalls people, places, and stories deeply rooted in their personal life and culture, considering the excavation of histories and futures as a means of wayfinding. James received their BFA in drawing and painting at the Ontario College of Art and Design. While studying furniture design, she has completed a group residency at the Art Gallery of Ontario and has shown in spaces such as Projet Pangee, Patel Brown Gallery in Toronto, Mercer Union, Gallery 44, and Margin of Errors Gallery. And James is currently lives and works in Toronto. And Eden creates paintings and that operates similar to folktales. She takes the absurd, fantastic, surreal, humorous, and unsettling approaches to existential questions of life, journey, and death. Her influences range widely and include the natural sciences, mysticism, Russian symbolism, comic books, thrift stores, and Mannerist paintings. Seifu earned her BFA at the University of Washington, and her paintings have been published in the University of Washington Bricolage Journal. She's exhibited at Half Gallery in Los Angeles, Delhi Gallery in New York, Arsenal Contemporary in Toronto, and the Center of Contemporary Art in Seattle. And Seifu currently lives and works in Seattle, where she's joining us from as well.
Hi, I'm Eden, coming to you from Seattle.
Hey everyone, I'm Oreka, Toronto.
Cool. So yeah, just to start, I thought it would be great to hear about your individual practices for those who may not have seen the show or have seen your work in person yet. Yeah, just to the sort of what do you think about in your practice and what's your process like? I think that would be an interesting place to start. Mm-hmm. Either one of you.
I'll go first. What was that?
Oh, I said take it away.
Okay, thanks. Well, so I feel like my work is a lot like kind of like an essay. Like I actually do write essays about like not each, but many paintings I make, I can and sometimes do write like a full-on essay. In my phone notes, I have this notebook where I write all about it, and the process is kind of like I go on with life. I am reading a lot, looking at a lot of things, and thinking, like contemplating a lot, and then like out of nowhere, I'll get some like imagery that pops in my mind, or I'm drawing, and then something appears, and usually the title kind of is adjoined with it. So it's a kind of a strange instantaneous process. And I've come to the conclusion what's happening is like all these things coalesce in my mind and then kind of like pop out as a, like it's like gestating and then like Athena like bursting out, like, a painting comes out more or less. And sometimes it's up to me to figure out what I am influenced by, because it's not always a conscious process, and that's where the essay comes in. And writing has always been very important to me, and and the titles are very important, I believe as well. And so after I kind of get this image and the title, and then I, write this essay and develop this understanding, which is something that continues as the idea develops. I might wait for a while until I, actually execute the painting, but usually I draft a lot, and I will go and explore like books or art or what have you, TV shows, any music, anything that I think might it's like an investigation that might inform the work or kind of elucidate what I'm even, contemplating or trying to convey. And I sometimes, if I'm good, I'll be like very organized about this, and I'll have like a document that has like all these random paintings and screenshots from music videos and whatnot. And yeah, like thrift stores are, I think, a very emblematic, emblematic of my sort of approach to making work, because I feel like thrift stores are, they're like these time capsules, in antique stores too, but thrift stores more so because, if you go to a real good one, that's not like, not like a Goodwill where it's like, oh, Forever 21. Like if you go to one with all this weird stuff, then it's like all of these, like all the tastes and ideas and what have you of like decades are contained within like a single space, and then things that are impressive and extravagant but maybe cheaply made, or things that are simple but they're old so they're expensive, and then the glass case all coexist in the space, and they all, by virtue of being there, are already connected to each other. And like I think everything is connected, but then it's kind of like up to you to make your there's like so many there's like so much you can learn from just like this conglomeration of like crap basically. And yeah, so I think it's basically like, I don't know, it's like my like no subject is safe from me, painting about it. Like I think everything's interesting and everything's I believe everything is connected, and like everything is everything, like everything is one thing is what I think. And that leads to almost a frustratingly vast amount of things to paint about. So yeah, I feel like I almost like, and I'm very aware of how little time I have, so I have to like pack in all this stuff into like a single painting. And like I'll just, like if anyone asks about a painting, I'll just like keep them there for like 3 hours, like, and this is because of this, and I'll make connections as I talk. And yeah, I really think it's fascinating, and it teaches me things a lot. Like I'm at this point very comfortable with the fact that like my conscious decisions are, if not secondary, just like completely overshadowed by like the force of the world and whatever. I almost see myself as like just like an intermediary, and like this kind of like channel through which all these seemingly disparate ideas and things like coalesce into like one square, one rectangle, so yeah, that's it. Oreka, how about you? What's your practice like?
Yeah, it's very much like I am experimenting as well, like making a concoction or investigating. I definitely do get like visions or dreams, and I have this like obsessive quality to make that into reality, like put it into reality. Because I guess I have a friend that I talk to a lot about just like anything is real, right? So we're talking about like the metaphysical, and it's like putting what you just think of or imagine or dreamt, or looking at where like I guess life, like not really thinking about things as coincidental, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to imagine them as like, I guess, intention or a type of direction. So with my work, I really try to think about these things and do like create worlds where these things can exist. And I really sometimes I get upset because I'm unable to like put what I think about, like making an exact replica.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
right? It's kind of frustrating,
Yeah.
but then it mutates into something that's like completely different that you're
Mhm.
satisfied with. Like for this sculpture back here, I actually made a prototype. Like this is a prototype because it's larger, but I made like a maquette, and it didn't turn out the exact same, but I'm very much happy with it. But yeah, a lot of my ideas are like visions, and I want to explore like where they intersect like in real life. Hmm. Yeah, and I think right now I'm really focused on thinking about, I guess, like the environment and thinking about uh, like oral histories and trying to bring them into reality. I remember like even uh, like I know you were talking about going to thrift stores and like looking at those like things that you find there as inspiration. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would go into like libraries and like look at like sci-fi romance covers and
Yeah,
like
I have like a collection of those. I still go to libraries, and that's like a big thing for me. Like I'll go and like just pull up books and just like look at them for like 5 minutes, and I'll just like
yeah,
love
yeah.
library.
I never really read them. I just like the covers a lot,
Same.
and imagery. And I'm trying to create like I'm looking at like different drawings that I have. Like I have sketchbooks here, and I often write like like if I'm seeing like things come up a lot in my work, like repetitive like symbols. I'm trying to make my own motifs
Yeah.
that kind of act as like their own language,
Mhm.
and just find out like what these things actually mean. So I have like a lot of writing in my phone as well, and I want to do a lot more research. I really like, I guess, uh, like I've been looking at a lot of archaeology. It's always been something that's been interesting to me, and I think you can see a lot of that in the sculpture.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so much more I want to explore, but I think for now, like it's just like one step at a time.
Yeah.
Because I can kind of feel overwhelmed with all these ideas, and
Yeah.
you know, more recently, like I also was doing work in my room before moving into like the newer studio.
Mhm.
So that's been such a change to just like reimagine my work, um, and to different scales as well, right? Because like when you're in your room or smaller spaces, you're
Yeah.
confined. And I think it's so interesting how it changes. Like both experiences are beautiful, um, and both convenient in their own way, for sure. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how like making art is like very much an exploratory process and is in the spirit of like exploration. And yeah, I since I was a kid, I had this like fascination with archaeology, and
Mhm.
just like I really like the natural sciences. And
Mhm.
uh I just like then and now I was fascinated by people who would go out in the field and dig for rocks and scale mountains for the rare plant. And I just think like the spirit of like adventure, like that, like thirst for adventure and like exploration is really beautiful. And
Mhm.
I think that is present like even if you're just in the studio or like your apartment like making art all the time. That's like you're kind of like facing the unknown every time, like even if it's something is like deceptively simple, like no, you can't replicate anything. Like there's going to be a minute difference on some level. And yeah, it's just like this constant like excavation that I think is like kind of daunting sometimes, but beautiful and like necessary. And you're almost like discovering these as but like you're discovering these ideas and these like forces within society or whatever, that like they might have been considered before, but like never in the way that never in the way that they are from your own perspective or the context in which you're working. So yeah, it's like, it's like digging and digging and digging. Love it.
For sure. Awesome.
I was wondering for both of you, because both of you think about, I mean, Oreka, you work a lot with this idea of portals, and Eden, you seem to think a lot about these alternative spaces in which, everyday experiences mix with like the subconscious and the spiritual. And I feel like there's resonance there between your practices. I mean, you approach it very differently. But I was wondering if you could speak about that a little more, like what do these spaces or in between spaces mean to you both? I guess conceptually, but also in the work.
I think a lot about like, I guess, like obviously like metaphysical, and I think like I guess I tried to imagine my work in more like three-dimensional spaces. So like the idea of portals can exist in these paintings, but when you bring them to 3D, like, is there an energy there? Is there like life? So I often question that, and I know I was like writing a little bit about animism and the idea that these like any object can hold like memory, or like has a spirit, or has life. And I really think that, I guess, belief really helped. I guess it was kind of like the, what is it, like the conduit like to this work here. Yeah, I think in my personal life too, like I was definitely and I still sometimes experience like just dissociating. So then when I'm dissociating, like where am I, like mentally where am I going? And I think that was also like one of like the catalysts for me like making art, because it's always been the case. So like a lot of these, I guess, images you see, because they reoccur in my dreams and my visions, I think they hold some truth to where I am transported in those moments. And like even the idea of like being transported, I think I wanted to recreate that with my sculptures, and I want there to be like an essence that can like, I guess, pull people in, and even myself. And yeah, I think I was also thinking about like ancestry and wanting to really like pay homage to like, especially like the women in my life, my mom's side, my dad's side, and thinking about like earth, and that like when we are gone, we like our DNA is still very much a part of that. And even just like these materials that I make my work with, like I still, they all come from the ground. So I think it's like very interesting to create and then think about like traveling within these objects, whether they're paintings or sculptures, videos. They constantly transport us, transport me, and I think it helps me to really like just have like a clear mind and understand like my purpose almost. Yeah, and I just really hope that it like resonates with other people. So I often like think that my work is an invitation to like have that conversation. Like even with Eden, like we have so many similarities, and we wouldn't be sitting here speaking with each other if like, I mean, we could possibly, but I just think it's like so cool that we share a lot of like, we have the same questions.
Yeah.
And I think like me personally, like the work is like just creating is a way that I can, create communion with people. And yeah.
And I also really resonate with like you contemplating like the metaphysical a lot. I'm always thinking about that, and my belief and and the beliefs of I mean, sometimes this is like speculated in within physics, but it's also very prevalent in like so many so much mystic thought, but like there's no separation. Like there's the portal, the portal doesn't exist, you know, like everything, like what is outside the portal, you know, where you go when you go through the portal, they're the same thing. And I think the portal is almost like getting like the egoic mind to like snap out of it for a moment, and to almost like impose some sort of like, you know, I guess it's up to what you define it as, but impose some awareness of like, you know, divinity, the sublime, or even just like, even if you don't buy any of that, just like how absurd and crazy it is to be, you know, on this like rock and this like incomprehensibly vast space. And it's like, yeah, it's like, whether it's like this literal portal to, I mean, not a literal portal, but like this, it could be a literal portal, like this mechanism in which some, like a viewer or yourself, you know, it could be anyone, is brought to this awareness of like just transcendental state, or they're just like for a moment, you know, taken out of like I think there's like this kind of glamour that like a lot of people are under, just like going through the motions, going through like, you know, repetition and, you know, going to work, yada, yada. And like, it's like, when are we gonna just like sit down and just be like, oh my God, I'm, you know, like I'm in space, like I'm like smaller than this. Like it's what I think, whatever angle you look at it, I'm sure there are folks out there who are fully aware and they're like, not a big deal. But I think, you know, just like the factor, sorry, this thing's fun now. Like I definitely see my work as like portals to that. I like to be surprised, like when I'm done making something, and I sometimes I show people my work, and like the first thing they do, like my sister, for instance, she'll just like burst out laughing, and like I'll burst out laughing, and that's what I want people to be like, you know, and like it's not out of like, you know, I want to be the most amazing ever. I just feel like I have this need that I can't control to like break the glamour a little bit, like break the spell of like things not being like incredibly amazing and just like unfathomably like absurd and beautiful and strange. And yeah, I definitely think that like community goes into it too, because as I make, you know, as I've been making more and more work, I feel more I definitely feel like I just immense gratitude to like everything and everyone I've ever interacted with, because I know they've like, you know, I'm not making stuff just because I'm like, you know, thinking about it and then, you know, going forward with my ideas. It's all like, nothing exists in a vacuum. Like all of these influences all around me, be it like my, you know, the barista who made my coffee, or like somebody I've been friends with for years, has like allowed me to make this stuff, which I truly love, and allows me to further connect with people. And but yeah, also like the thing about like portals in my work, I really like, I think the recent, in the past couple years, like online, I think, I mean, online is definitely like something the internet is something I think about, but like the fixation on liminal spaces, I think is so apt. Like it's so apt, and I don't think it's just like oh, look at this like weird abandoned mall. Like I think liminal spaces are, I mean, have always been everywhere, but I think now more than ever, like you can't get away from like a screen, which kind of is a portal itself into, you know, you could say the whole entire world or everywhere else, and you could, you know, and depictions of worlds, depictions of, you know, across the world. And so I think you can't really you can't really escape liminality anymore. And I think that is something that's more akin to the truth of everything being a portal, everything being an in-between to everything else. And I think that's why, you know, people are so fascinated by them, because there's some kind of resonant truth. And I really like, I think the settings of my work are kind of like these nondescript weird places, like a random field, and then, or like a building, and it just seems like, oh, where's the door, you know? Just something that seems like it can only exist in a dream, but I think is representative of something that exists like everywhere. And yeah, I like I like a lot of like art from like the like Renaissance, in which like they just want to flex and like show, look at those perspective, but like they would, you know, the rooms that like there would be like, I don't know, like an annunciation scene, and then it would be like this weird like room that Mary's in, that this wouldn't make any sense in real life. And yeah, I've always really liked stuff like that, and found it apt for depicting what it's, you know, depicting. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned liminal space, because like I just do endless scrolling. Like a lot of images have been popping up on Instagram, or even like on Tumblr back in the day.
Oh, Tumblr, yeah.
It's like, what is this? And
I know.
there's
It's so
something weird that's like looming, and you know, has the same quality of like, I guess, space itself, like outer space, being this like.
And I wanted to ask you both about, you know, the element of perhaps like fantasy or imagination that's in your work, and how, you know, how does that function in your practice? I think in a lot of ways, like the imagining or speculating is so liberating, but I'm curious if that's the case in your work. Like, what sort of drives you to explore these sorts of spaces?
Well, for me, I think it's like, I feel like it's like a way of organizing, and like encountering all the stimuli, and then like being able to organize it through like an imagined scene or story. It's also like, I think it's almost like, for me, it's like a culmination of life. Like I'm almost so like frustratingly, what's the word? Just like mesmerized by life, that I have to do something about it. And that means like, I take all this stuff, and that's why I think like fantasy isn't really like, you know, nothing exists in a vacuum. Like fantasy is reality. It doesn't exist in its own right. It exists because the person, the culture, whatever that is presenting this fantasy has been compelled by a factor, series of factors in the material world or whatever, that have like driven them to imagine these things. And yeah, I feel like I just like have to do it. Like it's like this, like, I don't know, it's like, you know, like people see a mountain and they want to climb it, and it's like the same thing. It's like I've witnessed life and all these things, and I have to almost like make more of it in my mind. And I always have felt that like myth and the storytelling has that aspect of like, kind of, it's like this concentration or distillation of like life, of ideas, of anything. And there's just so much. It's like grappling with like just infinity. I think it's like you know, you go through like hundreds of like billions of, you know, stimuli every day. And if I don't think it's more of a search, I don't think it's really search of meaning. I think it's just like wanting to do something with all this stuff, you know. And I think often it's a search of meaning, and people decide what's like, through fantasy, I think people decide what's the most important, they sift out the important stuff from like all, you know, all of everything, from like their perspective of nature, from this, from that, and it's like an individual and a collective thing. So I think fantasy is a very good organizing mechanism, and it's a very good way of just like interacting with something. It's like a medium, like not only an artistic medium, but it's like a communication kind of medium, you know, like it's like, yeah. So I think that's what it what it is for me. And just like the fact that like via fantasy you could, in theory, just make anything you want is something that I can't even get my head around, and like kind of stressed me out. But like it's something I just feel compelled to explore like forever. And yeah, I just think that like having any sort of grasp on vastness, on like, and you know, it can be vastness just like, you know, thinking about God, thinking about how big the universe is, thinking about how many atoms there are, you know, that kind of thing is like reinforced by, I think, like the conscious mind being able to think of anything, and make any story, make any, you know, fake monster, make any, I mean, I have like a guy with like flowers on his head, you know, anything. And that is like a really, I don't know, it's really fascinating. And it helps me interact more deeply with the world. Like you know, like it's instead of being like passive, it's just something that allows me to like, it's like cooking, you know, you take all these ingredients and you make something that's just as real as the ingredients. So yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said like is amazing, and even communication, like you're talking about just everything being a possibility. And when I think about like everyone's individual experience with the world, it's like very subjective. So there is
Yeah,
like
yeah. No objective reality.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you have like, you know, let's say the snow, like each snowflake is falling and it has a life of its own.
Yeah.
The plants, like everything has a life of its own. I think we like, especially when I was doing, so I took an agricultural class like in 2020, and like just being in the ground, it made me think about like, you know, everything holds information, and like, you know, what is it saying? And because we're all just individuals, like I think the idea of like creating, thinking about like fantasy and imagination, I think that's something that I often ask myself as well, to connect with the world and myself and think beyond. I also like, in the real world, like if you want to break it down like more simply too, it's like, you know, people often think fantasy is like escapism, and in a way it is, but also I do think, like for myself, I'm thinking about the world becoming like uninhabitable, right? Very soon, and like we like, although we won't have like this physical space, you know, we still have this like metaphysical space. And I often want to tap into that and think about like, okay, like where can we go? And then it makes me think about like obviously life and death. And I know you speak about that too. And you know, death doesn't have to be this scary, freaky, deaky thing. And I know in the West here, like that's often, you know, our perception of it. So then I think about like, you know, folklore, and like you mentioned mythology, and just like there just seems to be a continuum and like this non-linear experience. And I think all of these different elements is why like I'm so attracted to like fantasy. And yeah, like I know we were even speaking about like the name of the show, Fantastic Passage. Like I know you mentioned that it reminded you of like, I guess like an animation. Like, remember we were speaking about that? I don't know if you remember, like even like, I guess like the idea of like creating like Fantasia, like the movie. And I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember. I don't think I watched that movie.
You don't.
Wait, I'm trying to remember. No, I didn't.
Fantasia's like, I think it's like with Mickey Mouse, and then he's just like creating all different like life forms, a lot of colors, and we were thinking about like Fantastic Passage as this like door to I don't know, creation itself. But yeah, anyways, I think all of these different things I think about a lot when I'm making my work. Yeah, and just like even the idea of deja vu, you know,
Oh my God, yeah, I get that so much. Like, I'm just like, da da da, going on, and I'll get deja vu, and I'll be like, all of this is a trick, isn't it? I'm like, oh yeah, I have a consciousness. Like, this isn't just objective. Like, it's
Exactly.
crazy. Yeah.
And you think about I guess so. I think about like esotericism and like even spirituality or like even religion in comparison, like a small group or a large group of people like are both connected based on their beliefs, and through that, like you start to move accordingly, and things become more real than it may become for someone who doesn't believe.
Yeah.
You start having the same coincidences, just all of these different things, and it's crazy. It's
crazy. Yeah, it's like I feel like there is like an evolutionary, like both like evolutionary and like spiritual mechanism to humans being like hell bent on fantasy, like from the earliest, like they just making all these weird drawings. There's like something there that is just like essential to, I think it's like a almost like something that comes along with having like sentience, I think. And yeah, I agree with you with like fantasy, like not, like spiritual beliefs have a lot of like religion has a lot of elements of the fantastical, obviously, and that is something that which like has had a very discernible effect on like the reality, the real material world. And so that is like, yeah, that's another like area of liminality where it's like, okay, like you can say that like some belief is like very fantastical and lies in the realm of fantasy, but then like if all these structures are being built up because of it, and if people are dictating their lives accordingly, like, well, is it fantasy any longer? It's just, I don't know, it's just like, it's just, I feel like once you think about it for like 2 minutes, you're like, okay, like I don't think like there's a distinction, and I think that quality really is like very like endlessly fascinating. It's like kind of elusive and weird and like dodging you, and you got to catch it, and yeah, love it.
Yeah, even in like archaeology, like there's symbolism around the world that's like
consistent. Yeah, it's like, ooh, there's a snake over here, and they had a snake goddess, and it's like, it's that stuff blows my mind. That
nuts.
Yeah. It is, yeah. And like I think there's also like, I think about how like you talked about like objective, like it's everything's subjective. Everything is based on individual perception, and like there are like you could say, and as humans, we like we put our perception on a pedestal, but like that is also subjective. What makes our perception greater than like like some cyanobacteria that like basically started us off like billions of years ago, like literally nothing except us deciding that. And so there's like an innumerable amount of perspectives out there, and there's no like objective reality because of that. Even if you're looking at the same thing, like two people, like your position, your position relative to the tree, your past experiences, one might be colorblind, whatever, all influences that. And like I think there's something about like fantasy being like I think it's something where like reality is like distilled into like a story. It's kind of compact, and then it's like reinforced through people agreeing with it and retelling it. Of course it changes, but it's almost like trying to make subjective reality objective. And it's cool.
Maybe you two can speak about the work in the exhibition a little bit, because it's new work for both of you. And yeah, just like, what sort of you were thinking about when you were making the work, and how that perhaps has changed compared to previous work. I feel like you both felt like it was a sort of period of growth. So yeah.
Yeah, so my previous work, a lot of the figures I wasn't like showing their heads. They weren't available to see by the viewer, and I think I was making that clear, like distinction of like this is their world, this is ours, and you're getting a glimpse. And then so for these two paintings, like more recently, I was just trying to find a way to reintroduce the figures, and so now we see them entering, and like leaving their worlds, and the figures now have like eyes, and so the eyes are like also kind of muddled by, I guess, uh, like whether it's the background, like the foreground or the background, or some kind of material, right? So, for instance, this painting with the figure on the horse has red eyes, and the figure also has red eyes, and they're going off into this beam of light, which is like right there. And the painting right here with the snake and the figure, like both of these paintings, well, this painting especially is like very like allegorical. I was thinking about mythology and sorry, my ADD is going off, but the eye of this figure and the snake are both green. So I was thinking about like symbiosis and like the connection between both, I guess, species. So like both like the horse and the figure and the snake and the figure, and the figure entering their world and then having to create an alliance or a relationship. And I really wanted to capture like the chaos, and I wanted to have more movement. My paintings before were very stagnant because I was thinking about like the mundane, and wanting to see like Black people in spaces that were very just like everyday life. And now it's like they were still somewhat fantastical because there was always that door, and it was like, what is that? And now I think we've gone through the door, and I really enjoy like just messing around and seeing like, okay, so what are they doing? Where are they going? What's happening? This one's very chaotic. I really liked playing with the materiality, like the mark making. That's always been a thing for me, and I think, yeah, even when I see Eden's work, like I really like your mark making as well. It's amazing.
Thanks.
But yeah, I think for the sculptures too, like I talked about animism and just holding that energy. There's a moving sculpture in the basement, and I know we were speaking about like kineticism and kinetic energy. In the future, I would love to have like sculptures that like move with like natural elements like wind, water, like beats, and I just think like this work has just been so great. Like I had a lot of time, a great time making the work, and it was definitely like eye opening, and it's definitely going to be a longer series because I am excited because like
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and I know we talked about like collaborating too.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah, and just like I guess hearing the responses too from like everything, like people are like moved and enjoying like just seeing them how they respond, not just like what they're saying, but seeing like this life that's being produced from what was created in here. It's like the energy is going in and out from
Yes. Oh, I love it. I wanted to make a comment about like earlier, but I'll say now about like you were thinking about animism, and I feel like so like as was mentioned, like comic books and especially like manga and anime, it's something I've just been into for a long time, and through that I've been able to like just like branch out and like just learn more about like Japanese culture and aspects of it. And one thing, and I really like Shintoism, and I love the idea that like everything has a life. And that's something I think about, and like I think that's present like in a lot of places, even in like within Christianity. Like I have this like Milagros thing where like yeah, that has like all these body parts on the, it's a cross, and it's very beautiful. It has all these body parts. And then you know, like I grew up with like, you know, we're Orthodox, but I grew up with like these like saint candles and whatnot, and like that kind of thing is everywhere, and it's fascinating. Like it's like we have to, like there's just this urge to like ascribe life to everything, and I think it's less of a, it's like a recognition of sorts, I believe, whether or not people are aware of it. And yeah, I think like it deliberately, like, you know, making art for kind of I mean for many purposes, but like to kind of like you know, make, you know, imbue it with life is like really like a really powerful thing. And yeah, it's like very important to me for all my like I said, like planning. It's just like it has to have life. And and like when people are moved by it, you're almost, it's like, I don't know, it's like this kind of event of like multiplication, or just like magnification, I should say. But yeah, love it. Yeah, for these were also like a very like distinct period of growth for me making these works. And they like really range, like the things I was thinking about, like there's a wide range. And I think a lot of them like can relate to each other by thinking about like freedom and entrapment, and which I think is kind of, you know, pretty relevant. You know, like we had like years of like 2 years of like being in like full quarantine, to just like having to like, you know, like really scale back our activity. But like it's just something I've always thought about, and like freedom has always been really important to me, and like I'm still figuring out what that means. It's just something that's important to me. And yeah, and like I was thinking about time too, and how that relates to like freedom. And I mean, I could go from work to work and like draw the connections, but like for instance, the one that is like in the roundel of memory, etc. That one went through a lot of transformations, and that one was kind of like in part about nostalgia. And I've, ever since I was a kid, I had this like fear of nostalgia, because it just seemed like yearning for a past time just seemed like a feeling of being trapped, and that's just something I never wanted to experience, and I don't really experience it, which I'm glad about. But then like wistfulness, which I think is kind of something I was thinking of in this is not a park statue, this is you know, that one. That one is, I had this like playlist called Wistfulness I was listening to while making that one. And yeah, so nostalgia versus wistfulness was something that I was thinking about. And nostalgia is something that is like, is usually pretty specific, and there's like this like roundel like in the former painting that has like these like figures doing Ring Around the Rosie. And like the, I guess basically the narrative of that painting is like oh god, I wrote it down somewhere, but basically like the monster under the bed is like sleeping, and it's not really, doesn't really have a job to do, because like this person's yearning for the past and sense of nostalgia and time passing is kind of like the entity that's haunting them. And then there's like, you know, like the pillow that's like grandma loves you, and then like there's the like stuffed animal, and those kind of were things that I mean I love stuffed animals, and those were things that like called back to like childhood and remembrance for me. And then like outside the room there's like, and also the room is not supposed to look like it's supposed to look very, you know, very liminal, just like kind of a unreal place that's trying to pass as real. And this is like an all temporal happening. And then outside is like this vast, you know, like I was looking at a lot of like Grant Wood paintings and like landscape paintings that felt like very vast and free. And I think there's like a dog like running, and like a greyhound. And then there's like this like constellation of like this like woman reading to some children, and yeah, it's something about that. And but then this is, and like the figure that's like, you know, in the pajamas is kind of in anguish. Like time is, you know, like is kind of like an illusion. It's a way our brains like well, societally and biologically, we like process time like in a linear fashion, but that's not, you know, that's not the end all be all of time. And it's like, you know, there's lots of mystical practices where you like meditate and then you like transcend time, and it's like this, and I think like that white, like, you know, nondescript setting where just the neurons are present, and like this is all mechanism of like our brain. So yeah, that's a bit of what I was thinking about, versus like wistfulness, which is in that park painting. That's wistfulness can be about the past, but it's more, whereas nostalgia is specific, and often like painful or bittersweet. At least wistfulness can be very indulgent, and I like to indulge in moments of wistfulness, and it can just be, you know, I think it is a recognition of time, and it can be like, whether explicitly or implicitly, a recognition of like mortality, and it's very romantic and it's very sweet. And that's what I wanted the painting to be, very kind of morbid, and but very sweet and whimsical. And I feel like wistfulness is kind of transcendent, and I love it. And yeah, like I said, I like archaeology a lot, and like I used to be into like bog bodies and stuff, and I just thought they were so beautiful, and how like you know, being in this like like having this intimacy with like the earth, and the, you know, the like there has to be like this like the certain specific factors present to like preserve a body in that way, and like the algae or whatever, and like they are kind of allowing a body to be enjoyed really by posterity, like either because of like scientific and archaeological study, or just people, you know, people love a bug body, people love mummies because they're so cool, they tell you a lot about the past, and it's like this gift almost. And yeah, I think about the environment too, and I think especially as like, I don't know, like in my family growing up, like, you know, it wasn't like going out in nature wasn't a thing, you know, and like in my extended family too, it was like, you know, we immigrated from Ethiopia not to like go hiking, like, you know,
Yeah.
so like it was just something that I only really thought was available to me like in my like adulthood, really. I mean, I've always been interested in nature, and now I'm like, you know, very kind of obsessed with it, but like yeah, so I think like these, like this kind of also just like this like concert with it's a park, but like this concert with like a natural setting is something that I've been exploring more. And yeah, it is something that I think like I don't know, like it's very, very liberating. And I was gonna say something else, but yeah, those paintings kind of relate to each other. And then there's like the one that's like, oh, I could feel so clean, and that one's interesting. And also like making these was also like an exercise in like kind of identifying like my, you know, my self-imposed limitations and like breaking through them. Because like I'm very much like a planner and stuff, and I had to, that one in particular, the oh, I could feel so clean, like that went through many stages and reformations. And then like the water, like at some point I was like, there's like this, God, is it like Pharoah Sanders or something? I think it's like a Pharoah Sanders song or Sun Ra, I don't know, but it's called like "You Got to Have Freedom." And like I was like remembering that in my mind, because I was like, you know, two in my head, and I was like, you've got to have freedom. And so I was just like bam, 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 you know, with the paint. And that one is kind of like that one was partially inspired by a specific instance in my life where a couple years ago I started like this I made a prison pen pal, and we don't correspond now, but long story short, our correspondence was very interesting and compelling and beautiful. And he was talking to me how he found like freedom through Islam, and his letters are very beautiful. And he like, I told him about the song called The Bells by the Originals, and like I was basically saying like, I was like, oh, you gotta, I was like, do you hear the bells? Like, you gotta hear the bells, or something weird like that. And then he was like, I do. And then he sent me, he wrote about this song called You Are My Starship by Norman Connors. And that one is like sonically and just like conceptually feels very like transcendent and free. And I thought that was interesting coming from this person who's like spending their life in prison, and which is just, I imagine, just like the heaviest, like one of the heaviest things. And so yeah, I was thinking about like a group is kind of, the setting is like this, like like a group shower, and there's like the water, and it kind of looks like light, and then yeah, and it's like also a kind of like this investigating like how freedom is accessed, like going back to the one that's like in the roundel of memory, like it is something that, of course, like the physical material world and the systems that exist within it need to be able to like allow for freedom as defined as the people who are participating in it. But also like I just like to think about like the types of freedom that are discussed in like mystical traditions or whatever, like freedom through meditation or this and that, and just like freedom that subverts like the rules of like supposed rules of like reality and whatever. Yeah, and then and then there's like the Altar to Love one, which is so that one, it's called Michael and Angela Altar to Love, and that one is Michael and Angela are from 90 Day Fiance, and so yeah, 90 Day Fiance, just banging TLC show. They've got the top of the line content out there, and that show is just such a wise and consistently incredible teacher to me. And okay, let me say what the clip is about. The clip that painting like directly referenced. So like Angela is like from Georgia, and she goes Georgia in America, and then she goes to she's like a transporter, yada yada, and then she has this boyfriend who's like a great deal younger than her, who lives in Nigeria, named Michael, and they have this like really tempestuous relationship that is like very interesting, very clear, interesting power dynamics among racial, gender, economic lines. And then there's a scene where he takes her to a market, and she sees a goat's head, and then she like what was that?
She almost throws up.
Yeah, she's like very like melodramatic, and something about that like really stuck with me. And so I was like, I'm gonna make a painting about 90 Day Fiance one day, and I did. So yeah, that I think, and I was thinking about like the golden calf, and animal sacrifices, and like just like worship and like romance. And it's like romance has historically been this like weird space of like worship, basically, like worshiping the idea of another person. And yeah, and also like people worshiping like this lifestyle, or this like chasing after this like ideal which needs to be unattainable, and then like this being capitalized on. But yeah, it's like this weird altar that I wanted to make it look like it can exist in space. And because like the legs are all weird, and like I was looking at a lot of like Gothic architecture, and then the background I just wanted to look like really just maybe, like a trip or something.
One thing I wanted to maybe conclude with is just, more of an observation of that you touched on a little bit, Eden, about linear time and just how, even particularly in art history, this idea of linear time or like a singular narrative was really pushed and dominated our understandings of what art was in the West, and I feel like both of your work does such an amazing and interesting job at cutting across that assumption of linearity, not just and not in any specific way, but just having the flexibility of time and space, to be cyclical or recursive or exploratory. And yeah, I think it would be really wonderful to hear from you both about, what that means to you.
Yeah, I think about, so with time, I think about so my mom is Caribbean, my dad is Nigerian, and thinking about the way they operate with time and culturally. And then even myself, being in the West, being born in the West, and they obviously weren't. I've always had a difficult time being here, and so that's always brought me to think about, I guess, just an existential question as to what is time and how do we experience it. And I think with my work, it allows me to do that. Yeah, and then when you think about God too, God is creation, the creator, and just creation itself. And so literally when I'm creating, time doesn't exist for me. Yeah, and I'm often I often stop and I'm like, how much time has passed? And, I think it being open to thinking this way can be also very isolating as well, because the world is moving in a certain pace, and especially living here. I went to the Caribbean more than 10 years ago, and everything was just more slow paced, and the way people think about living is obviously very different from here. And I've always wondered why the world had to kind of follow this specific guideline as to how to think and just be. And I think right now in my life, often I what Eden said about happiness is and freedom, right? Which is not existing and not bending to these societal norms that we find ourselves thinking about a lot, because it's what's being fed to us. And I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I read Dion Brand's A Map to the Door of No Return. And she's a Toronto-based writer, and she is Caribbean. I think she's from Trinidad. And the way that she just talks about her experience growing up and trying to find her ancestral line and history is so beautiful, because she's kind of referencing her past, but then also taking you to her present day. And it's just so beautiful. It's very poetic. And even the way she tells the story, it really encourages you to think about how you perceive time and how you perceive your own origins. And I think in my work, I'm definitely exploring that. And then, her work was also it wasn't a catalyst, but when I was reading it, I was also making the first series of these paintings with these figures. And the door was there, and she talks about the door being this passageway, the door in Ghana, where they took the slaves, and it was historically the first passageway. She talks about water, land, and I think that's why I even explore a lot of this natural material, because it holds it's like a dictionary, or not a dictionary, it's like a record of, you know, our past. And I think that's so interesting to me. Yeah, I think all of these different elements are things that I really consider. And yeah, like even now, constantly dissociating. And then, you know, at times even remembering specific things. Or I think more recently I've decided that, because my memory is so bad, that I've decided that whatever I remember is actually what happened. Because it's like, we talk about coincidence, right? Because I think for myself, by losing a lot of memory, to gain that back, I often say like, oh, well, if this is the first thing that pops up in my mind, then it must have happened, right? It must have happened this way. And I know like we all have our different perceptions, but I think that's so cool to like decide that for myself, because then I can ask other people like, did this happen this way? And it's often like correct. So even that in itself is very interesting, that like these different memories come to us, especially like when in need, or, you know, when you're least expecting, and it, you know, encourages you, or, you know, pushes you to like ask more questions, or, you know, and then I think a lot of 2020 during the pandemic, I had to ask a lot of questions. And, you know, I think even 2019, yeah, like I made a video where I was speaking to different family members about their experiences like migrating, and like how their lives like were altered. And there's just like so much like juicy stories, but then also like this knowledge that I needed to hear about who I am, and, you know, the people that like raised me. And yeah, even like speaking with my mom intimately, or my aunt. And then, you know, more recently, not more recently, but like throughout my life, like I've experienced a lot of death, and just having to be okay with that. And so in that video, we talk about that, because like my great aunt had just died in 2019, and I kind of wanted to like hold her high, and like, even though she was gone, I wanted to, you know, like make her life meaningful. And just, you know, my mom was explaining like different possibilities that could have happened when she migrated here, but she chose a specific, I guess, direction. And yeah, it was just so beautiful to hear, and just like reimagining people. And I think
I really, too, a lot of what you said about like dissociating a lot, and like having encountered death a lot. And yeah, I think those things, and yeah, those things have kind of like led me to have this really weird relationship with time, which can be really unsettling, but ultimately I think is what allows me to make all these connections in my work. And I think it's necessary, and something that's going to become more and more. Actually, like I started getting like this like insane, like when I started making more and more work, like the frequency of deja vu I would experience just like shot up. And there's this one day I had deja vu for like 30 seconds, and it was so uncanny. I just started laughing. And it was really freaky. And I feel like there's an element of like being forced to confront like that. Maybe, you know, like I think this kind of, you know, like making art is something that it can vary, but for me at least, and